Reading through the Bible, Genesis 45, Joseph makes himself known. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh and of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father about all the honor accorded me in Egypt, and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly." Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him, weeping, and he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterward, his brothers talked with him. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had come, Pharaoh and all his officials were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, do this. Load your animals and return to the land of Canaan, and bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land." You are also directed to tell them, "Do this. Take some carts from Egypt for your children and your wives, and get your father and come. Never mind about your belongings, because the best of all Egypt will be yours." So the sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them carts as Pharaoh had commanded, and he also gave them provisions for their journey. To each of them he gave new clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 sets of clothing. And this is what he sent to his father: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and other provisions for his journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they were leaving, he said to them, "Don't quarrel on the way." So they went up from Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when they told him everything Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to carry him back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, I'm convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. You notice that in this passage, Joseph makes himself known to his brothers. He gives an interpretation to their deed that is very positive. Even though they sold him, and they did it because of their hatred toward him, he said the real reason that he was sold into Egypt is because God planned it this way, and it was to save lives that he was sent ahead of them into Egypt. Goshen is a very fruitful place. That's where the delta of Egypt is. And they are going to be able to live there separate from the Egyptians. You notice too that he gives each of them a new set of clothes, and he gives Benjamin 5 sets of clothes. Now before, he has already given him an amount of silver that the brothers did not receive. Carts are sent to carry the little ones and the wives, so it will make it easier for them in the journey to Egypt. And you will notice in chapter 45, verse 1, that Joseph speaks to them directly. He has sent all of his attendants out, and he is addressing them directly. He had used an interpreter before so they wouldn't know who he was. Now he is speaking directly to them. You'll notice that in verse 24 that Joseph had said to them, don't quarrel on the way. There is a tendency for these brothers to always blame somebody else for what happens. And he is telling them, don't quarrel, because now they're going to say, well, you were responsible, or this one was responsible. So he says, don't quarrel on the way. I probably ought to mention in verse 8 that Joseph says that God had sent him here, and he made me father to Pharaoh. Now, this is an idiomatic phrase that is often used to indicate a counselor. We find this among the Hebrews also, that someone becomes a father to them. And this means that they are a counselor to them, not necessarily related to the individual, but they are serving as a counselor.